The President, please be seated. The court is now in session. During today's hearing, and as the President and on behalf of my fellow judges of the trial chamber, allow me to warmly welcome the prosecution, the co-lead lawyers for the civil parties who are present today, and today the chamber is conducting the hearing to look at the update of the medical reports by the experts who have been assigned by the chamber to reassess the fitness to stand trial of Mrs. Ieng Thirith after the decision rendered by the Supreme Chamber dated on the 13th December 2011. Before we proceed to examine the reports by the experts, the Chamber wishes to remind parties the background of the procedures as follows. On February the 21st of 2011, counsels for Mrs. Ieng Thirith has submitted a motion before the Chamber contesting that that their client should be on trial concerning the trial on the fitness to stand trial be assessed, and that the chamber has assigned Dr. or Professor John Campbell, to conduct the medical assessment on the fitness to stand trial of Mrs. Ieng Thirith, and at the same time Professor John Campbell was asked by the chamber to file a report concerning his assessment. In particular, the relevant documents concerning the status of Mrs. Ieng Thirith's fitness, so that the chamber has the ground for assessing or deciding on her status. In 2011, again, Professor John Campbell concluded that Mrs. Ieng Thirith has suffered from her cognitive impairment that prevents her from exercising her fair trial rights. After this report, on the 23rd of August 2011, the trial chamber assigned 4 psychiatrists, including Dr. Huot Lina, psychiatrist. Number 2, Dr. Kat Chun Lee, also the psychiatrist. Number 3, Dr. Sina Fazel, the forensic psychiatrist. And number 4, Dr. Calvin Sun Ling, also the psychiatrist, to also conduct the assessment to support the conclusion by Professor John Campbell. The psychiatrist assessed the mental status of Mrs. Ieng Thirith, and later on they submitted their report to the chambers in 2011. The public hearing at later stage was conducted to examine the reports by the expert. On the 17th of November 2011, after assessing all the reports by these 5 doctors assigned by the chamber ruled that Mrs. Ieng Thirith has suffered from her cognitive impairment and indeed suffered from Alzheimer. For that reason, the chamber ruled that the accused person cannot stand trial. The trial chamber, in the ruling, ordered the immediate release. Later on, the prosecutors filed their appeal against the decision. The decision, as referred to in document E138. And the Supreme Court chamber has accordingly ruled that Ieng Thirith should be again reassessed to find out whether there is any possibility whether she can return or can be fit to stand trial. The experts who have been assigned to reassess her fitness to stand trial state indicated that they would render some measures to ensure that Mrs. Ieng Thirith would be or would recover from this, and some medicine were observed or administered. Occupational therapy was also part to be administered during this phase. This document concerning this can be referred to E1C8/1/7.4. Occupational therapies was administered for a certain period of time, and the doctors reported that the medicine that had been administered had been reduced dramatically, and on the 30th of April, the medicine was stopped. Mrs. Ieng Thirith had been treated for 18 weeks by late of July 2012. The occupational therapist who was trained, also trained 2 nurses to administer the occupational therapy on Mrs. Ieng Thirith that started on the 28th of May 2012. The session was administered for 3 months.
Therefore, the trial chambers will reassess immediately the fitness to plea and stand trial of Ms. Ieng Thirith following the completion of various measures in accordance with the ruling of the Supreme Court chamber. In the examination report submitted to the chamber has decided to appoint 3 experts, namely Professor John Campbell, Dr. Hud Lina, and Dr. Sina Fazol, in order to assist the experts as well as the chamber. And in order to assist the chambers in its decision, the chambers advise the experts and particularly the treating doctor to provide the report before the chambers, and we have already received the report in writing on the 29th of August 2012. That was yesterday. The psychiatrist expert submitted a joint report in English, and this report was circulated to concerned parties on the same date. And today, other parties also receive the version of the report in Khmer, and the chamber requests the experts to provide their expert opinions so that we have the basis in order to decide whether or not there has been any improvement in the cognitive functions and ability of the accused at question, in order to comply with the decision of the Supreme Court chamber. And today's hearings will allow the parties to put questions to the expert concerning the conclusion drawn in the report by the expert on the reassessment of the fitness of Ms. Ieng Thirith to plea and stand trial. I would like to now announce the hearing open. Ms. Sakolvati is now instructed to report the attendance of the parties to the proceeding this morning. Ms. Sakolvati, Mr. President, all parties invited by the chamber concerning the hearing on the cognitive abilities of Ms. Ieng Thirith are present, except Mr. Ieng Thirith, who is present in the detention cell downstairs. And as for the experts whom the chamber has invited to provide their oral report to the chambers are also present. According to the report by the experts, according to their knowledge and the best of their ability, they do not have any relation with the accused Ieng Thirith, either by marriage or by blood or with any civil parties recognized before this chamber. The witnesses as well as the experts have already taken an oath. President, thank you. The President. Before we proceed to the examination of the expert's report, I would like to first put some questions to the experts. First, I would like to ask Dr. Sina Fazol. You are the Senior Research Fellow of Psychiatry, and you are also a consultant, honorary consultant forensic psychiatrist at the University of Oxford in England. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you have also come to testify before this chamber. Actually, you testified last year in October, on the 19th of October 2011. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
President, thank you. How about Professor Lina Hood? You are a psychiatrist and you graduated with a master's degree in psychiatry from Australia, and you are now an assistant professor of psychiatry at International University in Phnom Penh. Is that correct? Response, that is correct. And on the 19th and 20th of October 2011, you were invited by the chamber to provide expert testimony in conjunction with the report, oral report by Dr. Sina Fazol. Is that correct? Response, that is correct. Then thank you. Professor John Campbell, you have your expertise in geriatric medicine, and you are from University of Otago from New Zealand. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Last year, before we handed in the expert appointment order dated the 23rd of June 2011, you submitted 2 reports afterward. Was that correct?
That is correct.
President, thank you. And in January 2012, you also prepared a supplementary report in accordance with the request by the trial chamber following the decision of the Supreme Court chamber requesting that the trial chamber consulted the appropriate medical expertise in order to administer additional medical treatment in order to stimulate the cognitive function and ability of Ms. Ieng Thirith. Did you prepare this report?
Yes, I did.
President, thank you. And earlier this week, you conducted a reassessment of the cognitive function as well as the physical ability of Ms. Ieng Thirith in conjunction with other 2 doctors, Dr. Sina Fazol and Dr. Lina Hood. Did you consult with the 2 experts, and did you examines the report and consolidated your reports together after your reassessment.
Yes, it was a joint consultation.
The President, thank you. Now the Chamber have a few questions concerning the background of Dr. Chatida. Doctor, can you tell us about your full name? Yes, Mr. President. My name is Chatida. I am a general psychiatrist. Question. Doctor, can you tell the court your date of birth? Response. Mr. President, I was born on the 23rd of November 1961. President, where is your current residence? Response. I live in Tul Tumpung 1, Chomkamon District, Phnom Penh City. Question. Can you tell the court your current occupation? Response. I am a general psychiatrist and I am also the deputy director of the Khmer Soviet Hospital in charge of mental health affairs, and I am also the deputy head of the department at the University of Health in specializing in psychiatry. President. According to the report by the greffier of the chamber just now, that to the best of your knowledge, you do not have any relationship with the accused or the civil parties recognized in case 002, either by marriage or by blood. Is that correct? Response. That is correct, Mr. President. I am not related to any parties to these proceedings. President, and according to the same report, it indicates that you have already taken an oath. Is that correct? Response. Yes, I have. President. Thank you. Now I wish to advise you on your duty and obligation as the experts. You are now the expert witness before the chamber, and you are duty bound to respond to the question by parties or the judges of the bench, and you shall tell the court only the truth, nothing but the truth, and you tell the court what you have observed and seen or witnessed by yourself, and you should endeavor to respond to the questions by the parties or by judges of the bench. Do you understand your obligations and duties before this chamber? Response. Yes, I do, Mr. President. I am ready and prepared to respond to all the questions that may be put.
The President, can you please tell the Chamber your educational background, in particular your expertise? You already talked or indicated your profession, but we would like to know your education in that particular expertise skill. Response. Mr. President, I attended the medical study session in 1980s, and I also served at the Ministry of Health and a health clinic or center at Sadam Tko Health Center. I worked as the head of that center. In 1997, in December, indeed, I also attended a training session on psychiatry, the session that concluded in 2011. And I also engaged in the mental health service at the Ministry of Health. I worked there as the deputy head of the department. I also am engaged in providing trainings to students who attend training courses on mental health. Back in 2006, I continued my education in the occupational therapy, and I also obtained 2 degrees from the United States. I continue to work at the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital. Thank you, Mr. President. The President, I have another question. During the time you work at the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital, have you had an opportunity to treat Mrs. Ieng Thirith? Response. Mr. President, I am engaged, or I have engaged in this since February 2012, engaged in treating Mrs. Ieng Thirith, working in collaboration with Calmet Hospital. I was asked to engage in giving my assessment on her mental status. However, by 2011, due to the fact that the medication regime was switched from the supervision of Calmet Hospital to the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital, I had been more fully engaged in treating the patient. The President, thank you. The Chamber would like to inform the parties that Dr. Chaktida will be here before us as a witness when the testimonies of the experts will be examined. The Chamber wishes to know from the parties whether they have any comment or any objection to these procedures. The President, without any comments or objection, then the Chamber may proceed. The President, Counsel Diana Ellis, you may now proceed.
I simply wanted to indicate we do have no objection to this witness.
President. Thank you. The Chamber would like now to ask the three experts whether Dr. Sina will be representing the three of you. Is that still the case, please?
Yes. I will take the questions initially, but I will ask my colleagues to comment on areas that they have specific expertise in.
The President, thank you. The Chamber will honor the request and will facilitate accordingly. The Chamber would like to invite Dr. Sina Fazel to present their finding on the assessment regarding the mental fitness of Mrs. Ieng Thirith. You may now proceed. The President, Dr. Fazel, could you please hold on, because Judge Silva Cartwright wishes to put a few questions. Judge Cartwright, you may now proceed.
Thank you, President. I would like to thank all three experts for returning to Cambodia to discharge their functions. The trial chamber is very grateful to all of you. I just want to outline the procedure I intend to take with relation to the examination of your report. First, I am going to summarize very briefly your earlier reports, which formed the basis for the trial chamber's unanimous decision in 2011 that the accused Ieng Thirith is unfit to stand trial. I will then move to summaries of your January report, which was sought after the Supreme Court chamber directed the trial chamber in consultation with you to recommend additional forms of treatment which might lead to Ieng Thirith's eventual fitness to stand trial. And then we will go to your main report, which I will take you through in some detail. At a certain point, I will ask Dr. Chokdida to speak to her reports, because they are in sharp distinction to the conclusions that the three court-appointed experts have come to. And when that process is ended, the examination of the witness, Dr. Chokdida, I will ask you if you have any comments, or through the President, any questions that you wish to put to her. Then we'll go back to your report and go through it in considerable detail, so that the public and the parties are very clear about your conclusions, the conclusions that you have reached as a result of your assessments. So the President has gone through the preceding procedures in great detail, and I hope that you are now clear about where this examination will go. I'm going to start first, because it is first in time, with your expert report of the 6th of October 2011, Professor Campbell. And I'll just summarise, and at the end of it ask you if there's anything you wish to add or emphasise differently from my emphasis. You concluded in October of 2011 that Ieng Thirith had a moderately severe dementing illness, most probably Alzheimer's disease, the effects of which may have been exacerbated by her past and current present circumstances. In your report, you recommended that a gradual reduction be undertaken of her psychotropic medication, and you noted that any improvement in her cognitive function as a result of that reduction in medication should be evident within 8 weeks. You went on to say, however, that it is probable that the reduction in medication will not produce a significant improvement. You noted, however, that there is a definite possibility that the drug reduction will lead to an improvement in cognitive function, enabling Ieng Thirith to participate in her defence. So first of all, Professor Campbell, is that a fair summary of your findings? Is there anything you would wish to emphasise differently or to comment upon?
That's a fair summary. I think also in that initial report I indicated the use of donepezil as an agent, although indicated that the chances that would improve the situation were slight.
Thank you. Now, on the 10th of October, following that assessment, the trial chamber appointed 4 psychiatrists, and 2 of those 4 are with us today. And I just want to go through your report that you completed at that time in the same way as I have just done for Professor Campbell. At that time, you said that from the scan data that you had available, that you found that Ieng Thirith's condition was consistent with dementia, but as the changes observed may be age-related, the scan data could not confirm a diagnosis of dementia. In your report, you noted that in order to be confident of a diagnosis of dementia, other forms of dementia, in particular vascular dementia, must be considered. On balance, in that psychiatric report, you stated that the clinical picture is one of gradual, insidious decline, which is more consistent with Alzheimer's disease than with vascular dementia. And you also noted that as you had insufficient historical data, it was impossible to comment on the progression of the disease. You went on to consider Dr. Campbell's proposal of a trial of donepezil, saying that you did not disagree with that, but noting your limited experience in its use, and further noting that the evidence for cognitive improvement following treatment with a medication such as donepezil suggested that the improvement is small in magnitude and limited to a minority of individuals who take it. In short, is it fair to say that the examining psychiatrists were sceptical of the potential of treatment with donepezil to maintain Ieng Thirith's then cognitive status or to improve her cognitive function? Is that a fair assumption that I take from your comments concerning that medication?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Overall, in that report, your findings were that while certain assistance and possible options to improve her fitness might be helpful, they were unlikely to improve her cognitive ability to the extent that she would have a sufficient understanding of the course of legal proceedings. Is that a fair summary of your 2011 findings, and is there anything you would want to add or to emphasise?
It is a fair summary. The only thing I would emphasise is that our diagnosis of dementia was informed by a variety of different pieces of evidence, including the scans, including informant histories, including an examination of Ieng Thirith using a variety of standardised tests. So we didn't take one piece of evidence in isolation, we put it together, and we were also cognizant of Professor Campbell's report and also previous medical assessments. So what we tried to do was put all these pieces of evidence together and come up with the most reasonable diagnosis, and in our opinion it was a clear diagnosis of dementia.
Thank you very much. Now, following the Supreme Court judgment on appeal, you were asked by the trial chamber to prepare to again assess Ieng Thirith and report on whether there was additional treatment that might improve her mental health to the extent that she might become fit to stand trial. Now, in that report of the 6th of January of this year, you noted that the medication donepezil had been started on the 8th of November, but was poorly tolerated by Ieng Thirith and led to her admission to hospital from the 12th to the 15th of November. Is that correct?
I'm going to ask Professor Campbell to comment on that.
Yes, that is correct. The donepezil, we advised to start at a dose of 5 milligrams. Unfortunately, it was started at 10 milligrams, and that led to the recognised complications of nausea and vomiting of donepezil.
Thank you. Well, during that same assessment, you undertook further clinical assessment and the standardised testing that you have referred to briefly, Dr. Fazell, and you reached in that report the following conclusion. Ieng Thirith has moderate to severe cognitive impairment secondary to a dementing illness, most probably Alzheimer's disease, with the likelihood also of a vascular component. Her cognitive functioning was worse on this assessment than in her earlier assessments. The history given by those staff seeing her regularly is consistent with the progression of her dementia rather than that she was feigning a deterioration. The report went on to say that Ieng Thirith has a progressive dementia, and it is unlikely that the recommendations given below will lead to an improvement sufficient for her to participate in her own defence. But in compliance with the directions given by the trial chamber, you recommended a trial of an alternative medication to donepezil, a medication called rivastigmine, and also recommended a further assessment after 3 to 4 months. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. You also commented in that report that no rehabilitation or structured cognitive stimulation program is currently available in Cambodia, but you very helpfully outlined a very limited means by which a Singapore occupational therapy program might be provided, and that was to be done by training of Cambodian health professionals and supervision of them by a fully trained Singapore-based occupational therapist. You emphasised in your report, however, that such a program should be considered as an adjunct or additional to the 2 recommendations, that was the reduction in continuing reduction in psychotropic medication and the start of rivastigmine. So it was an adjunct to that, and you did not expect it to improve her cognitive status. The best that it could achieve was an arrest of the speed of her deterioration. Now, that is a very blunt summary of an extensive reports, but I have done this so that the parties and the public are very clear about what previous assessments have been done and the findings, so that we can then lead on to the current situation. So is that summary from the 6th of January report accurate? Is anything any of you would wish to add or to emphasise?
That is accurate. The only additional thing to emphasise was that it was our view that any effect of these treatments, these two new additional treatments, would be seen within 3 months, and we felt that a period of 3 months was necessary before reassessment would be done.
Well, while we're on that point, I noted that in the judgment on appeal from the Supreme Court chamber, that the chamber noted, obviously, that it is ill-equipped to make medical findings on its own initiative, but it also noted that the medical literature recommended a 6-month trial of donepezil. So I just want your comments on that. The Supreme Court chamber cited in support of that a study reported in the Lancet 2006 at 367 by Bengt Winblad et al., donepezil in patients with severe Alzheimer's disease, double-blind, parallel group, placebo-controlled study. Now, I know they were talking about donepezil there, but you've made this comment about a 3-month trial, just so we're very clear that you do not consider a longer trial of the other medication that I have considerable difficulty pronouncing, rivastigmine. You don't consider that warranted.
I will ask Professor Campbell to respond to that.
No, that is correct. If there is going to be seen any improvement, that will be evident at 3 months. And at 6 months, there may still be evidence of improvement, but it will not be greater than that seen at 6 months.
Thank you. Now that brings us to the most recent assessment that you have undertaken. As I indicated at the outset, what I will do is to ask you for the summary only of your findings and any recommendations, and then later I will go back through the report in detail with you. But after you have given your summary of your findings and recommendations, I'm going to ask some questions of Professor Choktida, because, as I've already indicated, her assessment differs sharply from your assessment, and we need to be clear that every stone has been unturned and every detail assessed. So, first of all, you assessed Ieng Thirith on this occasion over the course of 3 days, is that correct?
It was over the course of 2 days.
Thank you. And you had the assistance of an interpreter, and did all 3 of you participate either jointly or individually during the 2 days of assessments?
It's a joint assessment by all 3 of us.
Now, I want to turn to paragraphs 58 to 63 of your current report, dated the 29th of August, where you set out your recommendations and conclusions. And I would ask you, presumably you, Dr. Feazell, to summarise those without going into any details, because we'll go back to that later, and to indicate if there are any, if there's any lack of unanimity among you as to these conclusions or any part of them. Thank you.
We felt there was no evidence of any improvement after the introduction of rivastigmine or the cognitive stimulation program. We felt actually there was a deterioration in cognitive function over the period of this time, but definitely no improvement. In some ways, the deterioration was seen quite clearly in terms of decreasing scores in standardized tests, in various other behavioral symptoms, such as her relationship with staff and other areas of her self-care and functioning. The other recommendation we came to was that we did not think there were any other treatments available that would improve the cognitive function of Ieng Thirith, and we therefore had no other medical recommendations to make. This view of ours was unanimous, and we found consistent evidence using a variety of sources to support this view.
Thank you. Now, Professor Choktida has prepared several reports as the treating physician, and I'll just pause before asking her any questions. Yes, well, Professor Choktida, thank you also for answering to the summons to come here today to give your assessment of Ieng Thirith, and as her treating physician. The court is very grateful to you for taking time to do that. Now, is it correct, Professor Choktida, that you have prepared several assessments, psychiatric assessments of Ieng Thirith, beginning on the 16th of February last year, and then one from October 2011 to April 2012, one on the 14th of August this year, and a final one, that was the final one immediately prior to that on the 12th of July 2012. Is that correct?
Response. Yes, it is, Your Honour.
Professor Chock, there is, it seems to be another report which has not reached me, but is commented on in the experts' most recent report, and that is a report dated the 9th of December of last year. Have you also prepared a report on that date?
Response. Yes, I have.
Thank you. Now, I think it would be fair to say that in none of your reports have you found that Ieng Thirith suffers from a deterioration in her mental health that would lead to a conclusion that she is unfit to stand trial. In summary, you believe that she is mentally able and not at a stage of dementia. Is that a fair summary of your various reports?
Response. Through the treatment and assessments, indeed she has been assessed on several occasions, in particular concerning her cognitive impairment, and we classified the assessment into two: the Alzheimer state and cognitive impairment, and we administered some tests, and also I administered some of my own tests. We observed that I have not found any sign of mental illness in Mrs. Ieng Thirith, although she has experienced some loss in memory.
Well, if we could just go through some of the details of these reports. In February of 2011, you found, you summarised that although Ieng Thirith was concerned about her physical health condition, she showed no symptoms of irregularity in her psychological status. Did you administer any standardised tests to come to that conclusion?
Before I respond to the question whether or not I administered any standardized tests, I would like to inform Your Honours about my approach. In my capacity as the psychiatrist, I am a female psychiatrist, I established a relationship with her. So that was my first report when I first encountered with her. I met with her on the first occasion. I established a relationship with her. I discussed with her in a very friendly manner. And we had to take some time in order to establish good relationship with her, and then she was free to share with us all the things that I had reported in my written report. And then after that, I conducted my assessment on her cognitive function. Then by ways of comparison from my first encounters to the later encounterings with her, the situation in the first time I met her was better, but later on it was degenerative, and I requested that I be allowed to meet her on 2 or 3 further occasions. Then I came up with that report.
So you considered it important to establish a good relationship with Ieng Thirith so she would be relaxed and respond as well as she could to your examination of her mental status. Is that right?
Janet.
Yes, that is correct, Your Honor, because mentally people need to earn the trust of others, and they have to have good relationship before we can actually approach her. And if we are someone who is unfamiliar to her, we might not be able to get all the answer she wants to give. And in addition to asking her questions and talking to her, I also consulted with people who attended to her on a daily basis as well.
Thank you. So, returning to my original question, did you administer any standardized tests before you completed your report of the 16th of February 2011?
On the 16th of February 2011, it was my first meeting with Ms. Ieng Thirith. On that day, I did not administer any tests in that first meeting. My purpose was merely to establish a relationship with her. I just wanted her to get to know me, and I wanted to find out about her background, about her personal background. At that time, I obtained a lot of information that I also incorporated into my report, and I draw a conclusion, a preliminary conclusion that apparently she did not have any symptoms of dementia.
So, in summary, in that report, you considered that she was appropriately dressed, answered questions well, that her dysphoric mood had appropriate effect. She suffered from no hallucinations. Her speech was normal, meaningful, and coherent. She showed no delusions, no intention to harm herself. She recognized people who are close to her, such as the female guards, and she knew she was well oriented to time and place. You considered her memory good, but that her concentration and attention are a bit poor. And that led you to the overall summary that she showed no symptom of irregularity in her psychological status. Is that a fair summary of that first report, Professor Chow?
Yes, that is correct, Your Honor.
That she can remember well, does not get lost or confused, but she is sometimes forgetful. And you noted that her social skills were still appropriate for a woman of her stage. So is that a fair summary of your conclusions on that occasion?
Your Honor, I am sorry, I did not hear the translation of your summary. Would you mind repeating?
I'll try again now, Professor Chok Tida. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you well, Your Honor.
Thank you. Well, in the report covering the period October 2011 to April of 2012, you come to the overall conclusion that Ieng Thirith does not have any symptoms of mental illness. Is that a correct summary of your conclusions on that occasion?
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
You expanded in the body of your report. You mention that she is polite and friendly, but that she speaks loudly to the staff and frequently slams the metal door with the crutch when she wants to get outside, that behaviour occurs once or twice a day. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. That is the information we obtained from the staff attended to her at the detention facility.
You mentioned that in part of your report dealing with Ieng Thirith's judgment and insight, saying that she has good judgment and insight. But when she speaks loudly to the staff and hits the door with her crutch, do you consider that to be good judgment and insight on Ieng Thirith's part?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I do not really understand your summary. Would you mind clarifying it?
When you mentioned, Professor Chok, that Ieng Thirith speaks loudly to the staff and strikes the door of her cell with the crutch when she wants to get outside, do you consider that to fit with your assessment that she had good judgment and insight at that stage?
Yes, that is correct, but I would like to explain here. When she used the walking stick to hit the door, actually it happened once in a while, and it was not a habitual practice. These kinds of behavior started to happen when she learned that she was about to be released. And I also observed that from the staff who attended to her as well at the detention facility. And she wanted to get out of this detention facility. And when I met her one day, she dressed properly. And she told me that she would be taken away by 2 o'clock on that day. And I asked her where she got the new clothes and the watch. Where did she get the clothes and watch from? And she said that she was given this new clothes and watch, and she wanted to go to the market in order to get new clothes and other items.
Yes, thank you. You commented that this behaviour of speaking loudly and hitting the door with her crutch was not habitual, but in your report you noted that it occurs once or twice a day. Which is the correct assessment, Professor Chok?
Response, that is correct, Your Honor, but later on we did not observe these kinds of behavior.
Now, apparently you have completed another report, which was dated the 9th of December, and in that report you mentioned that Ieng Thirith had told you that she had bought clothes outside in anticipation of leaving the facility. You stated in that report that you did not gather informant history, that is, information from people close to her, as part of your assessments, and you concluded that she had no symptoms of mental illness. So in December of 2011, it was still your diagnosis that Ieng Thirith had no signs of mental illness. Is that right?
Respond. That is correct, Your Honor. And I have this conclusion based on the actual situation. She has been in the detention facility for a long time, and she is anticipating that she would be released. That's why she got rather excited, and she also anticipated that she would go and get new clothes for herself.
Now, in preparing that report, or the earlier one from October 2011 to April 2012, did you conduct any standardized tests of Ieng Thirith?
Response. At that time, I administered the test in order to assess her level of understanding as well as her memory or retention capacity. At that time, I administered the test in order to derive at the outcome of the assessment.
So do you have a record of the results of those tests that you could share with us today?
In the report of the test, we identify the test I administered, and I also administered another memory test, but I did not test it using that tool directly, and the reason why I did not introduce the test directly because I had the reservation that she would be reluctant to cooperate when she learned that the test would be administered, so that we may not, if we continue to do it, we would not get any proper result.
Well, I'll move to the final two reports that we have from you, Professor Chok-Tida. The first is 12th of July 2012, and it's clear from that report that you followed your usual practice of beginning the assessment with a friendly conversation, but that you also administered the mental status examination test, and as a consequence of that, you reached a total score of 24. The correct name of that test is the mini mental state examination, and you reached a score of 24. Is that correct?
Respond. That is correct, Your Honor.
And on the basis of that reporting and your other examinations, including talking to her nurses and the physician who examines her on a daily basis, you reached this conclusion, that the patient is in a state of physical recovery. She has no symptoms of dementia, but she may forget a bit, which corresponds to her age, and she may be in a pre-dementia state, but not in a state of severity. Is that a fair summary of that July report, Professor Chok-Tida?
Yes, that is correct, Your Honor.
In the report that the court-appointed experts completed yesterday, they made some comments on your two latest reports, one of which we've looked at. And the experts said that the score of 24 out of 30 for the mini-mental state examination is not consistent with 8 other recorded examinations over 2011 and 2012, none of which have scored above 18. Were you aware that your test results were quite different from these other 8 examinations?
I was not aware of the previous test administered to her, but that was the result of the test I administered to her. And I observed that her physical recovery can be observed before she suffered from blood pressure as well as some urinary problems. But then due to the medical care provided to her, the condition has improved, and as a result, the overall score have increased to 24. So that was depending on the actual answer to the question, because each question carries certain weight, and we have to give some weight to each question. It is the outcome of our assessment.
Now, you have told us today that you consider it very important to establish a good, friendly relationship with patients such as Ieng Thirith. And, of course, being a woman and speaking the same language, I have inferred that you consider that your assessment is more accurate than those assessments undertaken in a testing situation instead of a clinical examination. Is that a fair summary of what you've told us today, Professor Choktida?
Response. Are you asking me the question? I thought you were asking your members on the bench. Are you asking that questions to me? Could you please repeat the question?
I was asking you, Professor Chok. You have emphasized today that you consider it very important to have a good, friendly relationship with a patient in Ieng Thirith's situation, and that as a woman and speaking the same language, you expect that she will be more relaxed with you, and therefore your assessments of her might be more accurate than those administered in a test as opposed to a clinical situation. Is that a fair summary of your approach, Professor Choktida?
Yes, it is. It exactly is, Your Honor. Not only with the patient who is being in the detention facility, but even the people outside, patient outside, before we administer certain tests or try to get any result, then we have to establish relationship with them.
Well, you've already indicated that you weren't aware of the results of the 8 other tests, but 3 of those were conducted by healthcare staff as a normal part of their care of Ieng Thirith, and not as a part of an assessment to stand trial. So would you accept that at least 3 of the tests were administered in quite relaxed circumstances.
I did not receive the report, and I did not review it myself either.
Well, I have to tell you that in their report of the 29th of August, the court-appointed experts say this in relation to the mini-mental status examination administered in July of this year, that you do not appear to have administered the test correctly, and a number of questions have been substituted that were less demanding. When we rescored the tests, the experts said, using the standardized version of the test, Mrs. Ieng Thirith would have scored 15. Is there any comment that you would wish to make on the statement that you have not administered the test correctly and less demanding questions were put to Ieng Thirith?
Your Honor, I recognize it, as I mentioned earlier. And if we administer the direct test to the patient, we may not get the accurate result. Now, for example, we ask her about the living condition of her children in Pailan province, then we had to establish a relation with her in order to get the answer to that. Otherwise, we would not get it. We had to tell them, for example, Pailan was with one of the provinces in Cambodia. I know that Professor Campbell administered a test to her some 6 months ago. At that time, I also took part in that assessment. At that time, Professor Campbell handed Mrs. Thirith a pen and asking her whether or not she recognized it as a pen or she could use the pen to write anything. At that time, she said she did not know it, she did not know how to use it either. And when the question was asked concerning her working relationship, she refused to respond to the question. 5 minutes later, since I was sitting nearby Ms. Ieng Thirith, I held the same pen and I handed this same pen to her. I told her that before I saw you use the pen to write good French language. I did not know whether or not you spoke or wrote English language. And then she took the pen from me and then she wrote it down that I go to school. That's what she writes on the piece of paper. And then after that, Professor Campbell asked her to draw a picture which was part of the MSE, and then she protested. She said she did not know how to draw anything. And then after that, I tried to chit-chat with her, and then afterwards I asked her to draw a picture, and she told me that she could not draw good pictures because she did not have a ruler with her. Without a ruler, she could not make a straight line. So that was because of the relationship I established with her.
Well, before we break for lunch, there is one final report that you have prepared, Professor Choktida, dated the 14th of August of this year, so it's a very recent report. In it, you seem to have administered the mini-mental status examination, but you have not set out the scores from that, and I wonder if you could help me with that first, please. Did you, in fact, administer the mini-mental status examination on the 14th of August this year?
Response. On the 14th of August, I met her late in the afternoon because I had to meet with the International Red Cross, and after that I met with her, and I did not administer the MMSE because I had already administered the test previously.
This report of the 14th of August is almost identical to the one completed in July, with precisely the same conclusion, that Ieng Thirith is in a state of physical recovery. She had no symptoms of dementia. She may forget a bit, which corresponds to her age, and may be in a pre-dementia state, but not in the state of severity. So you considered that her mental health was almost exactly the same after your testing in July. Is that correct?
Response. The current assessment was incorporated with the previous assessment. Some same questions were administered to test her memory. I did conclude like that based on her physical fitness as well.
Thank you. Well, I think the President is suggesting that we take the lunch adjournment now. So after lunch, Professor Choktita, I will have a few more questions for you, and then we'll return to the experts and have their comments on this witness examination. Thank you.
The President, thank you, Judge Cartwright. Indeed, it is an appropriate moment for the lunch adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn for lunch, and the next session will be resumed by 1:30 p.m. Court officer is now instructed to ensure that the experts and Dr. Choktita are well assisted during the break and have them return to the courtroom by 1:30. The court is adjourned.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រងជើ